Hello, and welcome to It's an Artful Life. I'm your host, Jillian Rhodes. This project started with a question: do the arts matter anymore? I decided to start asking people that very question and came up with this project, an experiment on how and if people see and experience the arts in their daily lives. Is it an artful life? Let's find out. If you have no voice, scream. If you have no legs, run. If you have no hope, invent. That's a quote from the Cirque du Soleil show Alegria. It sounds completely counterintuitive, and yet we can understand it in a way that goes beyond language. In today's interview, we talk about this kind of irrepressible creativity, this human way of creating even if there seems to be nothing to create. Also, I have to note that I've been doing these interviews for several weeks now, and it's constantly surprising how everyone sees art in such different ways. My interviewee today had one of the most unique views on what daily art can be so far. Well, I won't spoil it. Take a listen and let me know if you agree. Just to get started, could you just briefly introduce yourself? Where you're from, where you're based, what you do, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I come from a small little town in the eastern part of India called Gaya. This is my hometown, and this is where Lord Buddha attained enlightenment. I run a pharma marketing company here in the eastern India region. I've been doing it for my family office for almost a year. So I've been part of entrepreneurial journey straight out of business school, and I hope to start business school this fall in the US at Georgetown University. So that's my story, and
Okay, so your company, can you say you kind of work in entrepreneurship and starting companies?
Yeah, so as soon as I graduated from college, I started a food delivery company with my friends, which we exited out after running for a couple of years. And now I'm helping build a pharma marketing company, which is kind of like, manufacturing antibiotics, multivitamins, protein supplements, these products, and distributing them in the Eastern India market. So that is what I'm doing. I've been involved in entrepreneurship since college, and I'm very fascinated about how you can create value by taking a simple problem and solving it. And by value I mean you can create jobs, you can also create solutions for millions of people. So that fascinates me. That's my entrepreneurship. I would love to touch people's lives with the work I do through entrepreneurship.
Okay, interesting. So, this may be a kind of a strange question to start with off the bat, but do you consider yourself an artistic person?
I would say if you look at art in a very conventional form, if you talk about paintings, or probably like all those conventional forms of art, maybe not very artistic, but I feel a certain artistic degree in the entrepreneurial work I do as well. When you talk about, let's say, designing a product, right? So I feel an artistic inclination when I immerse myself in that. So in that way, I guess sure, because creativity is also part of like being an entrepreneur. So yeah, in that way, in that regards, but not in the conventional form, I guess.
Well, when you think about it, an entrepreneur is creating something. You're creating a business where there wasn't before. So I guess it is its own form of art per se.
Exactly. When you look at, let's say, building the right kind of work culture, how the people dynamics happen in a firm, or, how do you interact with, let's say, your potential customers when your product's just launching, all of that would require some kind of, dynamics, which would be very artistic. If everything falls into place the right way, it'll still be artistic. And if, let's say, something doesn't fall into the right way, as happens, most of the times, challenges come up, you try navigating through those, ideas. So I guess, yeah, it's art in a way. It depends on how you look at it, obviously. So I agree.
So in terms of what you call the conventional art, do you participate in it? Are you interested in it? Like, kind of, what's your background with that more conventional art?
So when I talk about art, I guess the closest artist I know in my family would be my mom, who sketches really good. And when it was painting class in school, I used to take her help because I wasn't really good at it. And when it comes to music, my dad, used to sing duets, and my aunt used to be on All India Radio playing sitar. So that's what I have noticed. But I personally do not have those skill sets. Although I enjoy, probably listening to music, or probably going to, let's say, some kind of a play, or some kind of dance show. I'd love to do that for sure. But if you ask me to be involved, in creating conventional art forms, I haven't done that much. I may have probably watched my aunt do that when she used to play on the All India Radio, but that is it, I guess. However, I am very intrigued by it, especially because in my home state, there's an art form called the Madhubani art form, which is, if I'm not wrong, it uses geometrical patterns to depict stories about marriages, stories about festivals like Holi. So it's done with fingers. You use fingers to paint Madhubani paintings, and you use twigs, matchsticks. You use pigments and dyes to come up with like geometrical patterns depicting different stories from this region. It's very popular in India as well as abroad. So it's called the Madhubani art form. So that's something which I have, noticed since I grew up in this region.
That's really interesting. I haven't actually heard about that before. I'll have to look it up. Yeah, so oftentimes when I talk to people who don't necessarily consider themselves artists, they say I don't participate in it, but I do kind of like to watch it, which I think is a perfectly valid experience of art, even if it's not creation. I think that experience of it, watching
Yeah.
it, seeing it, hearing it, that's also just as deep as creating it.
I've always wondered that when you like I've heard of people buying paintings, or having an art collection. I've always wondered what is the uh, approach behind that, and what exactly intrigues people behind choosing some form of art and not choosing some other parts, right? So that's something which has been on my mind. I haven't been able to invest my time and energy on it, but I plan to do so, and explore that way, I guess.
Interesting. So, do you have any particularly memorable experience of art?
Uh, I guess when I was in DC, I was actually working in Washington DC for a small amount of time. I was on an internship, so I do not remember the place where I went, but I watched this musical duo. Like they were playing a composition, and it was my first experience of probably two or three people playing it was Western music, because in India, when you go to watch people play music, all the Western music is catching up, but then it's mostly forms which I'm aware of, but there it was totally different, and people were seated in a very quiet manner. They were just enjoying the music, just seated and appreciating what kind of music they were playing. And I was enthralled, because they had so many different things which people could do at that time of the evening. It was a weekend, but they came to watch this duo perform, and that definitely enthralled me. And that's one recollection I have right now. Having said that, watching my aunt play the sitar, that has always captivated my mind, because she's really good, and when she sings, you can actually tell that she's very talented. So that I've always wondered, wow, I would love to do something like that. So I tried playing guitar back in high school. I tried learning. So I had a teacher, and he was, I thought he was a guitar teacher, but he turned out to be a sitar teacher. So when you learn the guitar, you do it in chords, but the sitar, it's done with sa, re, ga, ma, pa. So kind of like, messed up that. So I felt that, I shouldn't be doing that, and I did not continue. In retrospect, I think it was okay. I mean, I do not regret it, but yeah, that's what happened. Also, something which has captivated art, if you say, my dad's photographs of, singing duets with his friends in college. So that definitely, intrigues me. Like, hey, what did you do? And that is it. But I haven't, watched a lot of live art, like let's say plays or musical compositions as such. That's the one I mentioned. But about art forms, like let's say if I have to appreciate some kind of sculpture or some kind of painting, then I do not know. Maybe architecture, if you would consider that art, that excites me. I love looking at buildings, or whether those are tall buildings or whether they're small architectural forms in let's say a small town like Gaya. It definitely excites me, the structure of it, and how people make those buildings their own. So yeah, in that
Yeah.
way.
Cool. So, do
Mhm.
you think that you experience art on a daily basis? Like, is there art around you right now? Do you see art on your way to work? Kind of not performances, not, special events, but kind of just daily art.
Well, so one thing which fascinates me about my hometown is the traffic and the way people, navigate through that haze of that unruly mess. It looks like an unruly mess when you're there. When you're driving, you're like, wow, this street is full of people, cows, and but when you look at that works 24/7 and it works perfectly well. I'm able to reach my destination in time, even though it looks really, how should I say, crowded, but it's super organized. And the way it functions, I do get captivated. I made a video about it and posted on my Facebook. And for me, it was art, like this old street, dusty little street with vehicles and people, people walking in front of cars. And I get excited about it because, it still works. People may think on the outset that, wow, how does this town run? But it runs. And for me, that is art, I guess. I get excited by it.
It's interesting that you talk about that. Just a brief aside. When I lived in Cambodia, it
Uh-huh.
was truthfully one of the first things that people talked about. Is just like, how does anybody get around because the traffic the way it is, and it just works. You just learn. There's a rhyme and a reason, and it just sort of, it's this living system that works somehow. It's
Exactly.
amazing.
It's not the conventional form of living. It may look really messy, but it's beautiful. When you see it in function, in design, and when you see it happening live, you're like, wow, this is amazing. It catches your attention. And especially growing up, I've in this place, I've been in awe. And when I go to very structured cities, let's say like Washington DC, which is low in population and is very organized as compared to, let's say, a town like Gaya, that again, I admire the processes there. The way things work. It's more organized. It's more process oriented. Here in India, it's slightly more chaotic. And so those are two different kinds of artistic perceptions I have, I guess, regarding cities.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So, the next couple of questions they're kind of thought experiments per se. Just kind of like, if we do this, then what? So the first one is kind of like, considering, kind of the daily art. You mentioned architecture, you mentioned, your family playing music, the traffic and stuff. If we were to kind of remove all that sort of daily art, what do you think the world would look like?
Well, it'll be a boring place, no? Like, so I do feel that we need creativity around us, whether it's very conventional or non-conventional. We need that kind of energy flowing around us. And without all those things which you mentioned, I think it'll not be the same way. It won't be fun. Although I guess as a human race, we tend to create energy, and we tend to create beautiful things at the end of the day, whether we do it in a chaotic manner or whether we do it in a very organized manner. So I believe we'll do good without those things. We'll probably figure out other ways to bring that kind of excitement and enthusiasm in our lives.
Interesting that you say that we would find a way to make beautiful things, but so you take away the daily art and we'd still make art, is kind of what you're saying.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, figure out some other ways.
Interesting. Yeah, there's that kind of insatiable need to create, and it's sort of no matter what we kind of create. Well, so I guess this is kind of the opposite of that question, which is simply, you know, that when we see these things, when you see the traffic, you get excited about it. When you hear music, we feel some sort of emotion. So this is kind of like, it's kind of hard to imagine, but if all of that stuff was still there, there was still music, there was still, architecture, but that, we weren't able to experience any kind of feeling or emotion from it, what would that look like?
So you're saying that all these things exist and you don't feel any emotion, like when
Right.
you experience those things? Again, I mean, if I feel those pieces cannot compel me to, feel that kind of emotion, I wouldn't be talking about them, right? So if they are there and if they do not, you know, incite emotion, then there must be something else which does that. Some other objects which, or some other experiences which I haven't come across right now. But if these experiences wouldn't compel me to, have that kind of captivation, then something else would definitely be there, which would, bring positivity, which would bring, excitement, which would, bring that rhythm in my life. So I believe that if not this, then definitely there would be something else. Like I come from a very, optimistic angle, so I'm sure that I would be able to find out something which would excite me, for sure.
Interesting. So if there wasn't art, we'd still make art, and if you can't feel anything from art, you'd find something to make you feel.
Exactly.
That's a
I feel art
brilliant.
is important. Yeah.
It's a brilliantly optimistic. I love it.
Thank you.
Um, so the last question is, what do you think it means to live an artful life for you, for the people around you, for the world?
Well, so I have this motto, it is get up, open your eyes, lend a ear, strike a smile, because a fellow human somewhere needs your help. And that is art for me. And I believe when you talk about it's an artful life, that's the kind of life you describe. I mean, that's the description in my book. You do things which make people smile, whether it's work or it's just an interaction or it's just an, interaction like ours right now. So you do things which actually leave people with a positive outlook, and not just things. I mean, life in general, as I described, when you go out on a street and you're driving or you're just walking, you're amazed by the neatness of the road or even the unruly madness of an Indian street. That excites you. So, that makes you smile. So for me, that's how I would describe it. It's an artful life is basically, well, it's how life should be: beautiful, artful, and worth living.
I love it. Yeah, so do you have any final thoughts to add on to any of that or comments?
I would just like to say that, when I came into this podcast, I wasn't expecting these unconventional questions, and kind of made me think. And I'll just add something very random. When I'm sitting here with my laptop right now, I see the windows in front of me, which have these yellow patterns painted on the glass. And while I was talking to you, I had never noticed them, being very honest. But while I was going through this part, with you, I just noticed them for the first time, and I was like, wow, it looks so beautiful. So something really random I thought I should add.
Yay, that's exciting. I think it's always delightful to discover beautiful things, isn't it?
It is, yeah. That's what human life is for. That's what our world is for, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining. I really enjoyed listening to your answers a lot.
Thank you for having me. Good luck with this, and thank you for having me again.
It's an Artful Life will return next week with another interview. Thanks for listening.